We got Gators Breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Bringing you a special guest episode, of course, this one, Cole Cubelic from SEC Network, ESPN, a list of other things that Cole does. We'll get into that in just a second with him. But joins us right here on Gators Breakdown to bring a little bit of optimism coming out of spring, heading into the 2024 season there for Billy Napier and the Gators. So we'll get into all that there with Cole. Pretty good interview lined up for you guys. But, of course, remember, hit that like button. Subscribe right here on Gators Breakdown. If you haven't done so yet, you get those notifications when there's a new episode of Gators Breakdown right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. But be sure, smash that like button. Of course, you can join Gators Breakdown Plus, extra episodes, that chat episodes out there for you guys right now, ad-free episodes, newsletter, all that good stuff. And then don't forget, of course, the month of May, not much longer, 25% off, gatorsbreakdownmerch.com. Get your summertime, your new look, new designs, merch, all there. You beat Miami shirt, that game, of course, coming up not much further, August 31st, to kick the season off. Get all that stuff, gatorsbreakdownmerch.com. Here we are on Gators Breakdown with Cole Cubelic, analyst. I mean, it's a long list, Cole, of analyst, SEC Network, ESPN, UFL games. You got the podcast, The Cube Show, on radio every weekday morning with Greg McElroy on the Mac and Cube Show. I don't think you ever sleep.
I wish I did. I know I need more of it, but unfortunately, that's where we are right now. I'm not going to complain about any of it. It's all fun. But, yeah, my wife's hoping for some days off here soon so she can have some assistance with our 3 kids, which is probably the busiest job that I have.
Absolutely. I know how that is. Thanks for carving out some time right here for talking to these Gator fans right here on Gators Breakdown. Cole, you made some headlines throughout Gator Nation the last couple of weeks, coming off of Florida spring game, coming out of spring practice. Maybe a little more optimistic feeling coming out of Gainesville from your side.
Yeah, some of these expectations, I guess, or predictions that people are making, I don't understand it, David. Really, just the whole 2 wins, 3 wins, 4 wins. First off, this is Florida football. And I think people have kind of lost sight about that, which is funny because the way that some people are viewing the schedule, I believe, is very, how do I say it, logo dependent. And they're just looking at what that team has been at some point, and all of a sudden that's not a winnable game. When you actually go through the schedule of the games, and then when you compare it to last year's schedule, it's not as daunting as I think some people see. And I will say, when we first saw this schedule, it was shocking a couple of years ago when it first came out. And you just thought, how? Why? There's no way. But you put like the other part that I've said, you take those numbers that you had from Graham Mertz last year, and you put them on Peyton Thorne, or you put them on, let's just say Blake Shapen was back for another year next year in Mississippi State's offense. Those people are going to be like, oh, no, they're good. They're fine. If Lenore Sellers does that for Carolina this year, and he has those numbers going into last year, there will be no question marks about what he's going to be as a quarterback. But for some reason, people can't get behind Graham Mertz being a good quarterback. And I go back to this, not this past spring game, but 2 years ago. And I can remember Graham had to throw the ball away a lot because you remember Austin Armstrong was bringing everything that he had, and the offensive line had a couple guys out, and they were missing pressures, and everybody was up in arms, and they were all mad. And I was like, well, hold on a second. When I watched it, when this guy had a little bit of time to set up, he threw accurate footballs. He got the ball out on time. I would rather him throw it away than take a sack, but that's just me. I guess other people get mad at that. And I think he's the epitome of knowing how to operate an offense. And that's what he does well. And he's accurate. And I think that the offense will be able to expand a little bit this year. If the offensive line can take a step and be a little bit past what it was last year, I think the offense could be pretty good. I love Montrell Johnson. I know he's not super dynamic. He's not, Fred Jackson, or he's not, maybe not even Eric Rhett, but like the guy is a solid running back. I couldn't believe when I watched the spring game, this Jaden Baugh kid, when I talked to guys on the staff and they're like, yeah, he's 235. I was like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Because the jump cuts and the movement, you're like, no, he can't be that big. Like, there's no way. The tight end room is going to be solid. Would you love to have another receiver or two? Of course you would, especially in today's college football. But when you have that kind of a quarterback that can operate your offense at that level, and you got a receiver or two that can make some plays, a good tight end room to be able to move some things around in formation, some people, in motion, some people, with good backs, that's a great starting spot. And there are some areas that I think the defense can improve a little bit, and it probably needs more improvement than the offense. But I just think that there are strengths inside of this team in key spots that people, for whatever reason, they might not be ignoring them, David, but they're not paying them a lot of attention either.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said for returning a quarterback. First time in Billy Napier's career at Florida. Had one, and Levi Lewis for years at Louisiana was able to take advantage of that. Cole, of course, it's year 3. The first 2 years, the results haven't been the best for Billy Napier. How do you assess all the hot seat talk, but also knowing what he had to come from building this program away from Dan Mullen?
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things you have to also consider is not just how much talent was there, how much talent is there now, or how bad was it as far as depth was concerned at certain places, and how long was that going to take. I also think you had programs that were just run in very different ways. Dan ran his program in a very different way than Billy wants to. And the culture aspect of that is one thing that I love about Billy. The amount of people that he wants to put in spots where they have real responsibility inside the program, I appreciate that, and I like that. Has it gone as well as I expected it to? No. But do I think that it's time to necessarily throw in the towel? I also don't believe that either, because this is the portion that I think people completely just lose track of or don't pay attention to or don't understand. This was not just taking over a football program, regardless of where it was under Dan. You are now entering multiple first-time phases of college football that we've ever seen. Drastic, major, massive shifts in how things operate, how things work, how things are run. So not only did you come in and have to redo the program to an extent, but then you also had to manage all of these new aspects of college football that are very different for a lot of people. And let's just be honest, it's not just about how hard you work or how good you are as an X's and O's guy, or even how good you are as a recruiter anymore. And there are some aspects that just doesn't matter. So I think you also had to juggle all of that coming off COVID. And it's not as easy as a lot of people believe. And, it's unfortunate that we had Nick Saban's run, and we had Urban's run, and we had Dabo's run, and now we have Kirby's run, because I think those are going to be few and far between moving forward. And that's unfortunately everybody's expectation that, we can get to that. We can be that. We can do that. And I just don't think that that's going to be realistic moving forward. There's too much change. And like I do with anything that is going to be good with sustainability, you need consistency. And you need to understand expectations and people around you that understand expectations. And what are the expectations in college football right now? And I'm not talking about wins and losses. I'm talking about rules, how you operate, what you can and can't do. I feel like they change almost every day. And that part of it has made this a little bit more difficult. And I just don't think a lot of people take that into consideration.
So is any of the hot seat talk justified? Are you waiting for year 3? I mean, should we start to see the results in year 3, no matter what that schedule is and maybe how hard it is perceived?
I think if this year is not a satisfactory football season, then it would be more than fair to start having those conversations. It's just wild to think about, like, here we are, like year 3, like that 10, 15 years ago, that would have never been a real thing, I don't believe. But we also now have Power 5 offensive coordinators that left a Power 5 head coaching job to do that. We have group of 5 head coaches leaving to take Power 5 coordinator jobs, multiple, by the way. There were more coaches that left to go to the NFL this offseason than ever before. So even that part of it is just so different and so, I guess, evergreen, changing nonstop, that it's hard to really understand the consistency of it there. So I would have no problem with, if this year doesn't necessarily go according to plan, people having a real conversation of, okay, is this going to work? But right now, I want to see what they can do this year, like you said, with the returning quarterback, a returning defensive coordinator, making a few adjustments on the staff, and having other key players back in key spots that I think are going to be instrumental in Florida winning some games.
Cole, you talk about this new world of college football. Transfer portal is part of that. Florida brings in 2 tackles from the transfer portal. Of course, they've sprinkled in offensive linemen through the transfer portal in the last few years. This is a position you know very well, of course, because you played it. What is your assessment of transfer portal and the offensive line group as a whole? Because we know it's about cohesion. It's about development at that spot. You got 5 guys who need to play together. Is the transfer portal and guys leaving year in and year out, is that hurting offensive line development overall in college football? I mean, Florida's had to deal with it, 3 years now under Billy Napier. They got the benefit of Osiris Torrance a couple of years ago, of course, but haven't really nailed it just yet like that. And he's on in the NFL doing great things. But to me, this position group's probably the one that is really hardest to gauge through the transfer portal because of, the 5 having to equal 1.
There's no doubt. And it absolutely is hurt. I feel like we were just on the brink of taking the lack of development that offensive linemen were seeing kind of through high school and in college and understanding how to manage that. And we were kind of getting back to a little bit of physicality, and we were starting to sort of overcome that hurdle. And now we've run into this transfer portal situation where, you see Osiris Torrance is a really interesting case study. Same system, same verbiage, same coach, same technique, same fundamentals, different uniform. So he knew how they were going to practice. He knew where to go for certain drills in practice. Let's take a guy like Caden Proctor at Alabama, who left to go to Iowa, changed his mind, he's going to come back. How much development should we really expect him to have from last year to this year? And he struggled last year. He did some good things, but he struggled a lot last year. He didn't go through a spring practice, not at Iowa, not at Alabama. He had weight concerns when he got to school. We don't think that's probably going to be an issue when he comes back now. And he's gone out there and taken no real pass sets at full speed. And he has had no reps with combination blocks in the run game at full speed. None of that. So we just think he's going to be better. It doesn't work that way. So I think when you see a guy that goes to another school, like let's say Damian George last year, he didn't know how they practiced. He didn't know if they went T-boards early in practice or how they went through the shoots or what they did in the shoot. You have to learn all that. Well, while you're learning all that, you're probably not getting ahead as far as being one of the 5 best offensive linemen on the field. Then once you do grasp all the other stuff, you got to start working on just the techniques and fundamentals that make you a better offensive lineman, regardless of what system you're in. Then you got to get full speed work, contact work. I say it all the time, David, you cannot improve as an offensive or defensive lineman, specifically in the SEC, without doing it full speed against somebody that wants to make you look bad. You just can't. Like I could take you out there every day and we could 1,000 pass sets and I could run you through the chutes and we could go T-board right and left and we could push the sled. You ain't going to be a great offensive lineman or defensive lineman. But now I get you against somebody else that's trying to do it and trying to make you look dumb. Now we're going to figure out how to work. And we're going to figure out how to be a better player. And that's already limited anyway. So these guys that are coming to different schools and they got to learn the system or the scheme or the fundamentals or how they practice, they're behind day one. You got to catch up with all that. Then you have to start working on just being a better player after you know what to do. And then you mentioned that cohesion, the chemistry, being able to gel with one another. That doesn't just happen. And that usually doesn't happen except in games. Like you need game reps for that to happen. So that's what I tell people all the time. Don't judge a lot of these teams, specifically their offensive lines, until week 4 or 5, because you just won't know. Defensive linemen, they know your calls in practice. They know what the plays are, just like the offensive line knows when they make a jet call what they're doing. They know their tendencies. I know what pass rush moves my guy like more than anybody else. So you got to get against some different guys who are going to do different things before you really start to get better. And I think the portal has had a massive impact on it because a lot of guys are missing practice time, which is development time. And then they're missing that chemistry and that continuity time of just being around their guys and then practicing with their guys and not practicing with. I mean, we didn't develop as a group until my last 2 years at Auburn. And we had 5 starters. So it was me, Colin Sears, Kendall Simmons, Hart McGarry, Mike Pasillo. Colin Sears and I came in together, and the other 3 were the class behind us. So we were together for 4 years, all 5 of us, 4 years. 2 of us were together for 5 years. There wasn't anything we didn't know about each other. And we went through a couple different offenses, but I mean, we knew everything, how to expect the guy next to us and what they needed, what they were going to want, how they were going to operate. So, and that took that much time. So it's hard with the portal right now, man. Like you're chasing talent and then you're just trying to piece it all together after that.
Cole, Florida is one of only programs I know besides Louisiana where Billy Napier came from, and I'm sure this staff took it from him. He's got 2 dedicated on-field offensive line coaches. Do you, as far as I know, that's the only 2 programs that I think that are doing that. If you know others, you might can throw it out.
Well, there's some that are kind of hiding it. Like they'll have sort of an offensive line coach as the tight ends coach.
Yeah.
So what it does for you, however you want to label it or name it, or snake by. So now instead of in practice when we are an individual, so it's just our offensive lines practicing, instead of us going right tackle, right guard, center, left guard, left tackle. Then the 2s come up. Right tackle, right guard, center, left guard, left tackle. Now my tight ends coach, who either probably handles the tackles or the centers and the guards, or can just take the left side, or like he'll take the number 2 center and the left side. And I'll take the number 1 center and the right side. We're doubling our reps in practice. We are maximizing our practice time to get extra reps instead of waiting for everybody else to go. Because everybody needs the development and everybody needs some reps and some practice time. But now either the tackles can go with one guy and work with the tight ends, or the left side or the right side can go, or vice versa, however you want to do it. And you're able to basically maximize your reps. And he might just take the 2s one day and work with the second offensive line. So it's really smart. It's something that I do think that there are more teams out there that are doing it with a guy that at least knows how to handle it or manage it. He might not be, say, a second offensive line coach, but there's also not a lot of offensive line coach like Rob that could actually be the offensive coordinator if they needed to. I think there's a lot that think they probably could, but just when it comes down to it, that's not really who they are. So I think Rob's a little bit unique in that way that he could do that and he could manage that if he had to. So I just think it's all about maximizing reps. And when you have an offense that's going to be somewhat tight end heavy, why not? Because they're going to be working with that tight end all the time anyway. So get your tackles working with the tight ends a little bit more and then split the groups off and maximize your reps.
Yeah, interesting, how Florida does it. And now with analysts being able to be on-field coaches sometimes too, I'm sure that will take care of itself in a lot of other spots as well. Cole, let's go to your alma mater for a second because Florida's head coach of defense, Ron Roberts, comes over to help Austin Armstrong, the second-year DC. What can you maybe shed light on with Ron Roberts at Auburn last year and what he could bring to the Florida Gator defense this year?
Well, I think the first thing that his value at Florida is his relationship with Austin and how long they've known each other, how long they've worked together. I think sometimes it's difficult to have a true sounding board on your staff. It's why you'll see certain guys sort of latched on to either coordinators or head coaches wherever they go. Like Muschamp and T-Rob have been in Florida before. Like you think about that dynamic. And it's somebody who, if they come to you, you speak each other's language, or you go to them, they understand what you need, what you want. I kind of reference it sometimes as an FU coach. I think every coach need one, a guy that can like come down the hall and be like, hey man, FU, we're not doing that anymore. Or you got to start doing this. And they'll actually listen to them because most coaches don't listen to people because they're coaches and they're head coaches for a reason, because not only do they believe what they do works, a lot of times it has worked. And that's why they've gotten there. But I think Ron will be able to go to Austin and say, we don't need to be doing this, or why are you asking this kid to do that? And Austin can go to Ron and ask him, hey, when we did this here, this is why I'm doing it now. And they'll be able to bounce those ideas back and forth. I mean, he calls him his football dad for a reason. So I just think that it's going to be a way to mesh sort of the creator of the defense and then the innovator of the defense and put them together. It'll take a lot off of Austin. I really believe that, from a game planning perspective, from an in-game adjustment perspective, just because, and not even that Ron will have to do that all the time, but Austin will know he's got that guy there that will either see it or he can go ask him about it. And there's a ton of value in that, because I think a lot of coordinators put so much on themselves of they have to know every situation and every player and every rep and every formation and every call and every check. When you have a guy next to you that's done it and knows it as well as you do, it takes a giant weight off your shoulders to know you can either go ask him or to just give him the green light. Hey, tell me if we don't need to do this, or tell me if somebody else needs to be going somewhere, and you have that trust in one another. And I believe Austin and Ron do have that trust.
Cole, last thing here before I let you go. our good buddy Josh Pate had an interview with Billy Napier a few weeks ago, and Billy Napier confirmed that, hey, I'm going to be the play caller. Even, we got offensive coordinators here and there, but I'm going to be the play caller on game days. Russ Callaway will help me out. Rob Sale will help me out, but I'm going to be the play caller on game day. What have you seen from the Florida offense the first 2 years? Because there's a lot of consternation in Gator Nation about whether Billy Napier should be calling plays. Is that hurting Florida in other areas where special teams may be sacrificed or penalties may be sacrificed because he's too concentrated on the offense? How do you assess what the offenses look like, and is that the right move for Billy Napier?
I go back and forth with this all the time. And I think ultimately, if your best attribute is calling plays, be it offense or defense, then you should probably never give that up. And you should surround yourself with people that can aid you in all those other ways. I think that's one reason that Billy's staff is as big as it is he knows that he's going to have to dedicate a lot of time to that offense, designing it, game planning, calling, changing, just all the things that go into being the offensive coordinator on a weekly basis with being the head football coach. Now, I'm also in complete understanding that today's college football requires more from a head coach than ever before. I think you can make the argument that the X's and O's, the caliber in which you understand that could, I'm not definitely saying it is, David, but could be less important than ever because it's so much roster management. It's so much roster retention. It's so much just encouraging and motivating than ever before, along with, all the financial aspects that now come with it. But if that's what you do best, why would you subtract that strength from your team? I mean, it's almost like, hey, we have bazookas over here, but we're only going to use handguns. Well, why? They're heavy. We don't want to carry them around, and they're bulky. We feel like we can move better without them. Like, no, you use what's best in your arsenal. You use what can do the most damage inside of your arsenal. And if Billy is the best play caller in that building for that offense, then he should absolutely call plays. Hugh Freeze is going to have a heavy hand in calling plays again at Auburn. Well, guess how Hugh Freeze got to where he is? Calling friggin' plays. So why would you let somebody else do it if they're not as good as you? It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's, that goes back to I remember my first high school coach. He always started seniors. And we had 4 or 5 guys on the team that were a lot better than the seniors. So it's like you're costing your team ability and the potential of making a play because a guy is just older and he's been here longer. When we couldn't fast forward and be there longer, we'll be around later, but why would you take away the possibility of making a play because a guy's been there longer? And I think it's somewhat similar to that. Don't subtract your ability to be great just because you want to try to spend your time elsewhere and help other people with their jobs. Now, his ultimate job is being the head coach. I won't deny that. I won't subtract that. But if that's his best attribute, then he absolutely needs to be doing that.
Man, Cole, great stuff, man. Looking forward. SEC Media Days in a couple of months. We're looking forward to seeing you around the South this fall on those sidelines calling these SEC games. Once again, thank you for being on Gators Breakdown.
Somebody told me that the other day that Media Days is 60 days away?
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm not ready for it. I need a vacation. I need a break. I need to decompress before we actually, because once that hits, man, it's full speed ahead from that standpoint. So it can't be that close. I got to figure something out.
Absolutely. Take some time off in June if you can.
We're going to work on it. Maybe the whole month.
There we go. All right, cool. Thanks, man.
Thanks, David.